Please join me in welcoming Mr. Alvaro de Vicente.
Well, what I thought I would do is more of a rapid-fire ideas, some of which are going to emphasize what Colin has spoken about, or be a preview to things that Rich and Joe are going to talk about, and I hope that perhaps I can put some pressure on them to really deliver on these points. And probably going to provoke more questions than answers, because I'm not going to go into any of these points that deeply. I'm just going to put them out there, mostly as ideas for all of you to think about. And some of them you'll already be doing or think they're not applicable. Others may cause you to think a little bit, but we'll be around. We'll have the question and answer period right after this talk, and another one this afternoon. So here we go. The first, and I thought I would put down 10, just because, I don't know, that seems like a thing to do. I mean, you could have 20, 30, you could have 5, but 10 seems like a good number. So here we go. First one is, it helps to call things for what they are, right? It helps in terms of clarity in decision making. It's not a phone, it's a personal computer. So the question is not, should I give my son a phone, but should I give him a personal portable computer to carry with him all the time? It's not social media. Is a portal into antisocial behavior. Right? Clarity in describing what it is will provide clarity in deciding what to do. I think part of the problem is that often we're deciding, but the terms are unclear, and therefore the decision may not be based on what the reality of it. Second one, when reality is challenging, virtual reality is attractive. That's true for all of us. Now, reality is challenging for pre-teenage and teenage boys almost all the time, with enough frequency. Not huge challenges, thanks be to God, but small challenges, boredom that Colin was talking about, and not knowing what to do with it. Stress and anxiety, much more so now than when we were their age. Back in the 90s, talking to teenage boys, I never asked them if they were stressed or anxious. That was never a question. It was not part of the vocabulary. You just wouldn't talk about that with boys. You would talk about other things, but not that. Now, it's a fairly common topic of conversation. It's much more natural to ask, are you stressed about this? For them to talk about it. And it's not just that the word has been introduced into their lives. I think the reality has been introduced into their lives, and there are many reasons for that. But those are some of the challenges they're going to have. Remember a good friend of mine who was very mad at his freshman in high school son because the boy was supposed to be ready at a particular time, and he wasn't ready to be picked up from his school. He was nowhere to be found. It took the dad about 15 minutes to find him. Finally found him in the gym, just hanging out. Pulled him out physically, put him in the car, drove about 5 minutes out, and then the boy said, "Oh, Dad, I forgot all my bags." Right? He's dressed in athletic gear, his uniform is back at school, his books, everything's. And, the night before, my friend had a long conversation with his son about responsibility with his studies and work. So I forgot my bags. Had to turn around, pick up the bags. Now he's really late for the dinner appointment. They're back down on 7 Locks again. And the dad is just reading him the riot act about how you have to be more responsible and this and that. And the boy says, "Dad, I'm flunking math. I got cut from the basketball team. I have no friends. And puberty is killing me." That just came out, right? And I realized this, Dad, holy cow, this is the conversation I've been waiting for my whole life, and here it is, right? And I have to go from being really upset to actually be paternal about this stuff. But the point is, preteen, teenage boys, they're going to be confused. The hormones are all over the place. Their self-confidence is low. They're stressed, whatever. right? What an opportunity they have at their age to learn how to deal with those challenges face to face. What screens will do is put a barrier between them and the challenge. But the challenge does not go away. It comes back stronger once the barrier is gone. And the only thing that has happened is that the boy's ability to deal with the challenge has been crippled, right? has been undermined. So the virtual world actually makes living in reality more challenging. Number 3, pornography for a boy fills a vacuum and makes the vacuum even bigger. Now, statistically, the main reasons that boys get into pornography are 1, accidental. It was not a plan, it came to me. And 2, curiosity. Those 2 things put together make it likely that they're going to be exposed to pornography. The average age when a boy is exposed to pornography in our country is 8 or 9 years old, right? That's 3rd grade, maybe 4th grade. That's the average age, right? Good news is that half are older than that. Bad news, half are younger than that. Now, can't eradicate pornography from their lives without introducing positive passions that Colin was talking about. The battle against pornography is not a no battle. It's a yes battle. It's a battle for reality, battle for beauty, battle for love. It's not a battle against evil. Pornography kills their imagination, their creativity, and their appreciation for the real. Right? Today's beautiful day, coming into the school today, seeing the colors on the trees. What a beauty. Right? A kid in pornography is not going to see that. Right? The eyes will be open, but it will not receive the beauty of what's around him. So what happens is that he will replace any pleasure with sexual pleasure. And that will be the only pleasure that he will have the more he gets into pornography. And that will be the main reason for him to want to do things. It goes from being accidental to being intentional, to being purposeful. I need it, right? That's what I want to do. Number 4, pornography is everyone's problem. Is everyone in this room's problem. We all have a problem with it. And the reason for it is twofold. 1, we all have concupiscence, the inclination to sin, the inclination to immoral behavior, attracted to it, a tendency to it. We all have that. Number 2, there's a multi-billion-dollar industry that wants to get pornography into our brains. And for that industry to get pornography into my brain is a low-level investment because they only have a few more years of a client for evil, right? In my case. A 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, that's a great investment. To get him hooked into that industry for the next 70 years, that's a worthwhile investment for them. That reality means, well, 1, there's going to be less of it in your homes. Less of it. I know that because you're here. At least you're alert, you're aware, you want to avoid it. There's going to be less of it here at the Heights because you guys have your sons here and because we're aware and we're alert and we want to fight and we want to emphasize the good. But everyone is vulnerable and under attack. I don't care how good your son is. He is vulnerable and under attack. Many are exposed. It's so hard to keep everything out. Many are exposed. Some are enslaved by it. Colin has talked about how to avoid exposure by being positive. Rich is going to talk about how to avoid exposure by being preventative and technologically savvy. Joe is going to talk about how to, once exposed, not become enslaved to it, but actually reject it and become much more of a lover afterwards. As parents, You accompany your children through the problem. Some of the accompaniment is going to be prevention. Some is going to be self-control. Some of it's going to be recovery. You accompany them, right? Colin talked about that, right? Don't let disappointment and disgust, if you find that your son has given into it, don't let that affect the way that you parent your child. Don't parent through fear and because of fear. Because your child will not trust that parenting, and he will grow up afraid. You don't want him to grow up afraid. You want him to grow up loving, wanting the good. It's very difficult. And I think especially for moms, it's very difficult when you realize that your son has given into it. It hurts. It seems incredible that my son would be doing that. Don't let that disappointment and disgust really affect the way you parent. It may affect the way that you control technology, and what he's allowed to do. That's for a game, that has to happen, but not the way that you deal with him. The biggest weapons that you have in this battle: love, encouragement, support, willing and free accountability, emphasizing the good. That's the biggest weapon. Number 5, FOMO, fear of missing out, is real. Right? Most boys have, I would say, low self-confidence. Often the boys who are most boisterous are the ones who have lower self-confidence. They need to be boisterous because they're afraid that otherwise they're going to be pointed out as, not being real men of some sort. Limitations that you put on your son's life on technology will challenge your son's social life. Right? Remember the old, playground fear that, two kids are going to make teams and they're going to pick players, and the fear that you might be the last kid to get picked, right? Oh my gosh, nobody wants to be that kid. Well, what about if you don't even know where the playground is? What about if everyone says, we're going to go play basketball, and you're not given the direction to the playground? Well, that's a rejection. That's what they will feel if they can't get into that social media chat, in that Instagram. They can get even texting, group texting. They will feel, but I'm going to be out of the loop. They're going to feel like we might if we are in a room with people who have all seen the same movie and we haven't, and they're talking about the movie all the time and quoting lines and scenes, and we are there and we realize, man, I'm not in the conversation. I don't know what they're talking about because they have done something where I wasn't, that I don't know about. FOMO is real. Technology does appear to challenge to increase their social life. The lack of technology appears to challenge, right, their social life. But I think for us to make a distinction, social media does not equal better communication, right? Social media and constant communication doesn't equal more friendships. In social media, you're going to be communicating all the time. Does that mean you're going to have better friends? Not necessarily. As a matter of fact, social media group chat communication tends to be bad communication. When you have a group of boys communicating through social media or group chat, very typically, I'm not going to say all the time, but very typically, it goes south quickly, right? It's the virtual locker room. If you were to say, boy, I want my son to be engaged in conversation in the locker room all the time. It doesn't sound like a great idea, because we all know that by definition, that conversation tends to go bad, right? And at the very best, you hope that it's neutral, right? That no damage is done. That's what these virtual chat groups will do. Number 6, your sons can actually have friends without social media. They'll tell you the contrary, but it's not true. They can have friends without having social media. Many boys that I've seen with the deepest friendships are boys who did not engage in that social media group chat type of activity. And I don't mean, a group chat for very specific things, like for this team when practice is. I mean the group chat where, you spend a couple hours talking about nothing and usually talking about bad things, right? Now, there are two lies that boys believe when they get into this kind of social media conversations. One is the online chats or these virtual chats are private to the group, right? Whatever I say here in this chat group or on Instagram is private to the group. They're hard to convince that actually would be a lot more private if you didn't type it, but just print it and put it on the back window of your car and drive around the whole beltway. Like that's a lot more private, right? Hard to be convinced of that. And the second lie that they fall into is whatever you say in one of these group chats, it's not serious. Nobody should be offended by it. It's just a joke. And it doesn't represent who I am. That's the second line they believe. Because often if you show them what they said, they'll go, wow, we're just kidding. But I know that girl. We are friends. But I know that I didn't mean anything. He doesn't mind, right? Those are typically the comments. So I think one way to think about it is, the social media conversations produce a mental attitude where I want to be liked, I want to be popular. All my communications in this medium are intended for me to be liked by the group and to be thought as cool by the group. That's the reason for the communication. As opposed to friendship, where the mental attitude is one of commitment to someone, regardless of how liked I may be. So it's not just the actual conversation that may take place. I think that at some point, even the attitude of communicating this way, it can become negative, whereas one that I try to be liked. Right? It's almost like posting every time that we go out to dinner, posting pictures. What is the attitude there? Is it to share something good with my friends? I can see it. If we take a picture of dinner and go, hey, you got to come to this place, you'll love it, right, to this one person. But otherwise, I'm just posting this so people will go, wow, he lives a really cool life, right? It's amazing everything that he does. It's a different mental attitude. I'm looking for affirmation from people out there. That's my number one priority, as opposed to being committed to affirming somebody in my life that I care about. Number 7, be empathetic. Your son's no or low-tech life will seem very hard to him. We do have to be empathetic. I know that often we feel like saying, come on, shut up, it's not that bad, right? First world problem. But for them, it's a big deal. Right? We do need to seek to understand their point of view. How do they see reality? What need do they see? Right? What itch are they trying to scratch that Colin was talking about? Right? That we feel their pain, so to speak. It's such a 90s thing, right? We feel their pain. Separate between an objective and subjective challenge. Like, we can tell the difference. No, that's a subjective challenge. You think that that's bad, but it really isn't. That's not a problem. They can't. For them, every subjective challenge is objective. And the reason that we don't see it is our deficiency. Like, you don't understand. You're too old. You're too set in your ways. You've never been a kid, right? You were born old, clearly, right? You don't care about me. You don't love me. You don't care about the fact that I'm going to be miserable. You don't care about the fact that I am the only one in the whole universe who has no access to this because you're a horrible parent, right? All those things. We see them as subjective. For them, they're objective. The boys are incredibly good at presenting to you a reality, their reality, as if it was the reality, right? Everyone in the school has this phone. I'm the only one. The teachers don't care. So-and-so thinks it's a fantastic thing, right? Their reality becomes their reality. So empathy, an understanding of their subjective challenge, what is it they're faced with, but you only want to provide a solution to the objective challenge. That is, the subjective challenge, I need this phone so that I can communicate with my friends all the time. Yeah, that must be tough not to be able to do that. Let's see if we can think of other ways. I need a phone with a GPS because I'm going to start driving. Interesting. Maybe so, right? Maybe we want you to have a GPS, right? We can provide a solution for the objective challenge. Subjective one, understanding, empathy, don't really have to do anything about it, right? Because it's not a problem in itself. And that means that as a parent, one of the most difficult things is that you have to be really empathetic, but you don't have to worry about being liked. Right? The moment that you begin to worry about being liked is the moment that you may compromise the wrong way. And your son will be very, very clear about not liking you at some points. They have an incredible ability to be clear in their statements when they want to. But that's not what you're here for. Right? You're not here for your sons to say, I think my dad is the coolest. My mom is really cool. Not really. You're here for them to be really, really good men. Number 8, giving in to your son's desires because of their insistence is not good, right? Your sons can be very single-minded about what they want, but they're born lobbyists. They really know how to lobby you, right? And they'll tell you all the good reasons. I'm going to be so much better if I have this. I'm going to have so many friends. I'm going to study so much better. I'm just going to be the model child if you give me this. And if you don't, it's going to be miserable, and everyone is going to hate me, and everyone's going to think that you're weird, right? So they're incredible lobbyists. Now, to give in to their request because you're tired of saying no is a really bad idea. If the reason you're giving in is, pesters so much, I'm just going to give in. Really bad idea. Because you're not solving anything. You're creating a bunch of battles now, right? To give in, to say yes to the request because you need to stop the teenage domestic terrorist activity that is going on. And I get it. They can be really nasty, right? Because it's not just that, boy, my boy doesn't like me. It's that he's making home hell. Like, he's just bringing everything down. You know, his younger siblings like everything, right? He's there. You cannot negotiate with terrorists. You can. It gets worse, right? You got to say, sorry. It's gonna be bad for a while, but we just don't negotiate, right? Because it's really bad now. By holding the line, this may be the worst that it gets. If I don't hold the line, it's only going to get worse. We say yes because we really think this is the right thing for my son to do, as Colin was talking about. This is the way for him to now grow. He can do this, and we're going to set it up in such a way that I have a backstop for him, right, that I can help him along. It means that we have to be very prayerful and prudential about when to say yes. We have to be inclined to saying yes, not because of the pestering, but because we want them to acquire self-mastery over technology. So we got to be inclined to saying yes, prudential about when to say it, and yet not afraid to say no if we think that it's imprudent for them to have certain technology. Try to explain why we say no, but do not expect understanding on their part or acceptance. Like, you don't need to explain until they say, okay, I get it. Because very often when you argue with a teenage boy or pre-teenage boy, you're arguing with a being who's not open to the truth. He's only desiring a result. And if you don't provide the result, they're going to keep arguing. So try to explain it the best you can. At some point you may have to say, that's the best explanation I have, and it's a really good one. So that's the only one you're going to get. Let me know if you have any specific questions about it, right? But that's the only one you're going to get. And it is okay to pull back technology that we have already given them. And Joe will talk about some of that. That is that allowing technology use is not an irreversible decision. It's okay to go back and say, we're going to have to pull this back for this reason. Or even to say, I have to apologize. I should not have given you that. That was my mistake. I really didn't think about it through. I'll try not to do that ever again. Right? I love you too much for you to be exposed to this at this point. We're going to have to work towards that. It's okay to do that. Number 9, boys with technology restrictions end up grateful for those restrictions. And boys without technology restrictions end up saddled with a battle for freedom from tech addiction. They're born lobbyists. They're developed hackers. Right? Every boy is a hacker. They know how to get into stuff. My experience has been that most boys have greater access to technology, to screens, than parents think they do. Unless you are a super duper cybersecurity, unless you're trained, and some of you are, they're trained, that I know I can be ahead of my kids because, I am a total expert on this, meaning this is what I do for a living, right? Unless you are that, I would say most parents think that they have a greater handle on the technology at home than they actually do. And the boys have a lot of help to become really good hackers, right? And finally, number 10, this accompanying your sons through mastery of technology is what you're here on earth for. Don't see it as a pain. Don't see it as, poor me, now I have to deal with this. This is what you're here for. This is why they have you as parents. It is not a battle with your sons. It is a battle you fight with your sons to make sure that they grow into this self-mastery that Colin was talking about, this accompanying them. And for that, you have resources that we'll talk about. You have each other that we'll talk about. Most importantly, you have God's grace on your side. Right? There's a multi-billion-dollar industry trying to ruin your son's life. There's a creator of the universe trying to bring your son to heaven. Who do you think is going to win? If we're faithful, if we're good instruments of that grace. It's not only who's going to win. We've won already. We just have to play it out. Right? All we have to do is stay connected to that source of grace. And your sacrificial love for them is the greatest connection. And that sacrificial love is there because you're here. And it's a beautiful day. You could be doing so many other things, but you're here in a room, right, listening to people talk. So good for you. Thank you.